So going on a home visit is one of the most enjoyable parts of this role. I really, really love it. For me, it's the epitome of what I do, because going on a home visit means that I'm there to meet the family and I'm there to meet the person with dementia. And I'm there to learn their story, and it's all of this is very necessary and pertinent to providing a person-centred care support service. This is especially useful for people with dementia. In fact, we couldn't do the role without it. Unless we know the person with dementia, we can't possibly support them in the right way. So any care agency who doesn't use person-centred care is not a care agency you want to use. So person-centred care with dementia is particularly important, because if we don't understand that person's life history, we can't understand their behaviour as their dementia progresses, and we can't understand, or we can't tailor our care support to them in the very specific way that they need. So going out to meet customers is the best part of the job for me. I don't mind working from home, that's fine. I don't mind working via email and telephone call and Zoom, but actually going out and meeting people face to face is absolutely the thing I want to be doing. So I have a few customers in mind who particularly had an impact on me when I visited them for the first time. I don't know, it's like a box of chocolates. I don't know who to choose first. I think I'm going to choose a gentleman who's sadly just passed away, literally a couple of weeks ago. But when I went to visit him, I think it was back in January, I went to visit him. His son doesn't live nearby, but he travelled at least an hour to get there. His daughter does live nearby, and she had travelled to get there by bus. And the wife of the gentleman with dementia was also there, and also their live-in carer that we are supplying. So it was quite a packed living room, and I remember distinctly as I parked up on the drive and went through the front door, I was just met with a sea of anxious faces, stress, sadness, and clearly a group of people having difficulty with dealing with the challenging situation that they had with their father. Their father was a very technical man, very scientific, and never a chatty man. So we got talking, and it was interesting to speak to all of them, to understand, what their particular concerns were. But it was only when I spoke to the gentleman in question, who hadn't really had much of a part in the group conversation up until then. It was only when I spoke to him that I realised what they were dealing with. So as I said, he was not a chatty man, but he was a great listener, I think. I think he was listening to an awful lot of what was going on, and he may not have been chipping in and saying things, but I think he listened. And that is actually, while I'm at this point, that is actually something to remember with people with dementia. They may take longer to respond to anything that you're saying to them, but I suspect they're still listening quite hard to what you're saying, even if they can't say anything in return. So I would always advise still talking to the person with dementia, even if they don't respond and they can't communicate back. It's very important to keep that communication going, and even though it may be one way, do carry on talking to them and speaking like you always have done. So it was very interesting to talk to this gentleman, because he said a little bit about what he'd done in his life. He had a little bit of prompting from his son and his daughter, but he was able to say a few words. And I'm just trying to think, So I think this was the start of the year, January, February, and sadly he passed away in July. So it wasn't that long ago. So it wasn't, I'm trying to gauge where he was on his timeline. So it was half a dozen months before he passed away. Obviously, everybody's experience of dementia is different. So this doesn't necessarily mean anything towards anybody else, but I'm just trying to gauge in my own mind where he was on his own particular personal timeline. So we had a little bit of a chat, but the main thing I wanted to talk to him about was what he enjoyed doing. And what he enjoyed doing was Scrabble, playing the piano, fairly highly technical things that, I'm sorry, just went over my head, but I was thinking of more of practical things, activities that our living care assistant, but also the family could engage with him doing. So I was looking at things that he had a passion for, that he's always enjoyed, and I was then going to make the suggestions. So we had a very good discussion about that. I then made some suggestions. Although there was a piano in the living room, this gentleman had difficulty actually getting to it. So I suggested piano keyboard games on an iPad, or Scrabble on the iPad. You can play against a real person, or you play against artificial intelligence, a bot, I suppose. But the beauty of these kind of games online is that you can do them in the comfort of your own armchair with your cup of tea beside you. So doing these kind of things, it could be that the living carer would have to set up the iPad on this gentleman's lap, get it to the app, open up the game, and then show him how to play by moving his finger to move the tiles, etc. in Scrabble. But I think the innate ability that was stored up here, he would soon be able to play the piano or play the Scrabble game. So it's having those important living room conversations where you can, and I'm talking about myself here, where I can observe the person with dementia, I can listen to what they're saying, but I'm also very much observing their whole body language, how they're saying things, with what enthusiasm or not, listening to their replies to my questions or my statements that I'm making to them. And because we avoid questions, if we can, with people with dementia. And then also very much listening to what they're not saying, because that also tells me so much about them and what they like. Because with people with dementia, you have to be somewhat of a detective to fill in the gaps. So the suggestions were made. I popped those in an email to the whole family and the living carer once I got home. And lastly, when I leave a home visit, it's obviously been for me quite an intense experience because I had a room full of people who I was having to talk to. But when I left this particular home visit, I remember saying goodbye to each of them and shaking hands and whatever. And as I left, I turned around and I might get emotional here, but all I saw was smiling faces. I saw relief and I saw stress diminished. And for me, that was, I am going to get upset. For me, that was a really important, lasting impression of this gentleman, because I could tell that I had made a difference. And in the follow-up emails and the regular contact I had with the son and the daughter afterwards was so useful to understand how the suggestions were going down, to understand other things that the living carer had thought about, which were brilliant. So that home visit with all of those people in that room may have been a bit of an occasion for all of us, but it was so worthwhile and so beneficial. And as I say, typically when I drive home, I'm reviewing the whole thing in my mind. So I'm reviewing the home visit, and that last image of the smiling faces as I left the front room as you can tell, has stayed with me. And when I heard, sadly, a couple of weeks ago, that this lovely gentleman had passed away, I had a lovely email from his daughter. Oh dear, scurry. I had a lovely email from his daughter saying, thank you. Thank you for making such a difference in his last few months. Thank you for making his last few months enjoyable. Thank you for the suggestions. You know what I'm saying. So this gentleman was particularly impactful for me. And I just wanted to share that with you. Gosh, that's an entire video. I need to move on to the next customer now. Okay.